Connor, everybody's bracket is busted. I mean, everybody's, right? Isn't yours?
Yeah. I mean, there's still a path for me to win my bracket pool, so I guess it's not technically busted. Like, if I win a couple $100, I'm not going to claim I got a bracket, that was busted. But yeah, it's rough. I got 2 Final Four teams out, which is already more than I had eliminated last year. Like I said, I had 3 of the Final Four last year, and the fall was coming. The championship hangover, it's real. Look, I'm not alone. Everybody's got it. Everybody's dealing with it pretty much. I got like one buddy who has all 4 of his Final Four teams left, and like that's it. I mean, that's like the only guy or the only person in our pool who has some sort of action remaining in the Final Four. So, yeah, it's rough. I mean, that's kind of what we expect, though. That's why this tournament is what it is. That's why we call it madness.
And you expect it. That's exactly right. And it's fun. And even when the bracket gets busted, you're fine with it. And the two things when it comes to the things that sports fans are always saying throughout a season that kind of get a little bit annoying is like everybody mentions about how their bracket gets busted. I mean, ad nauseum for the month of March. But I would still take that over my fantasy team this, my fantasy team that, too. My fantasy team everything.
How'd you guys' fantasy teams do this year?
I don't even have one.
I didn't play.
I'm on a streak. You know what you're supposed to do, not mess with a streak. I'm on a streak of like 15 years with no fantasy football, so I think I'd like to keep that one running. All right, I want to ask about this is something we talked about Friday, a little bit earlier in the show. You've made the point on your column on Saturday Down South. Arkansas is right now clearly the best basketball program in the SEC. Is this correct, Connor?
I mean, how can you argue with it? Like, look, we play the results too much with the NCAA tournament. I am not one of these people that's going to sit here and say that the SEC was a fraud conference because it had all of these upset losses. No, like, SEC had a ton of teams just choke. They're right. Like, they had a ton of teams that couldn't find a way to win ugly. You know who found a way to win ugly? Arkansas. Yeah, it was a rock fight. It was terrible to watch for long stretches. But you know what doesn't really matter? What any of that, like, any shooting percentage, like turnovers, none of that matters because every other SEC team would kill to be in Arkansas's position right now. That is playing in a Sweet 16, having a chance to take down the top team in the tournament, Gonzaga, and really not a whole lot of pressure is on you now. I mean, Arkansas is the only SEC team who can say in this tournament that it met expectations. I mean, think about that. That is a major recruiting tool for Eric Musselman, who is the only SEC coach who can claim he won an NCAA tournament game in consecutive years now as well. I mean, that's the type of stuff that matters. It's always good when you're doing stuff that hasn't been done since the Nolan Richardson days. And Lord knows he has had plenty of things that he has done so far in which we have gone back to that era. So I think that no matter what, this is going to be a win for Arkansas, right? Like, if they get killed by Gonzaga and it's a 20-point game, all right, whatever. Top overall season tournament, at least they made it to the Sweet 16. That's something to build on. You did it in kind of a different way than the identity of last year's team to a certain extent. So I think that there are just so many positives that can come from being the last SEC team in the field for the second consecutive year, and I think Eric Musselman and that staff will take that any day of the week.
Well, the point that Arkansas has had the most success right now, they've got the coach that's probably got the most national cachet, and you've got the building that sells out every game, that brings all this energy. You just didn't really expect to see, Kentucky just completely crumble. Tennessee, after running through the tournament, not be able to score. I know there was an issue for them not scoring, but, there were still signs from some of these other programs. Auburn just hadn't quite been the same. Alabama was up and down all year long. You never know which team was going to show up. And LSU, it's like, you kind of knew it was going to happen once Will Wade was gone. And we already had, what has it been, 6 coaches fired in the SEC? And I don't know if I'm even counting Mike White moving from Florida over to Georgia. Like, it's amazing. Like, you either made the tournament or you're looking for a new coach or you've already hired a new coach.
It is wild when you put it in perspective like that. I mean, there are not a lot of programs right now who truly feel like they have answers, and a lot of them have questions. I mean, that includes Kentucky and Tennessee. Like, right, we have to be asking these questions about Cal. We have to be asking these questions about Rick Barnes. And Rick Barnes, who just for whatever reason can't get over the hump in March. And there are a lot of Tennessee fans who are wondering, are they ever going to get to an Elite Eight? Are they going to get to a Final Four with Rick Barnes? If this was the team that had all the things working in its favor and you were playing well at the end of the season, you had an unselfish team with incredible guard play, and you have future NBA guys, like you have all these things working in your favor, and it's still like, oh man, that's it? A Michigan team who, quite frankly, should have been more on the bubble than it was to make the tournament. Like that's a really tough thing to have to accept, and Arkansas doesn't have to answer those questions. They have their guy. They have a guy who is showing that he can win in March, and man, there are much worse places to be than the place that Arkansas is at right now.
Yeah, there definitely is a heck of a lot worse, especially with the talent and the ability to get through March that Eric Musselman has shown these last two seasons. I mean, going on about to play their seventh NCAA tournament in the last 2 years. When it comes to the teams, though, that didn't make the tournament, and kind of to reopen up this can of worms, after what we've seen through the first two rounds, does A&M have a more of a leg to stand on with we got the raw end of the deal?
Yeah, look, playing results it makes no sense whatsoever. Playing the results of you could have told me Notre Dame could win every game by 100 in the NCAA tournament, and I still would have told you that A&M had a better resume than Notre Dame. Beat Notre Dame the head-to-head, had the NAT, had the net rankings, like all those different things. A&M had working in its favor, and it got a raw deal. Like when Joe Lunardi is sitting there, like bragging about the fact that he had Tennessee on the 3 line and saying after they lost to Michigan that he was smiling, like what a loser. In my opinion, like that's ridiculous. Get out of here with that crap. Like that is such a joke if you're using that to justify results, like what happened. The selection committee isn't trying to predict results. That is not their job. And if you would ask me to bet the house on Kentucky against St. Peter's, I'm taking that bet 100 times out of 100. Like it wasn't like Kentucky was overrated. We should have seen St. Peter's was better, and this entire league was just being propped up. Like that's just to me, it's absurd. And if people want to use that to justify like why someone was overrated, why someone was a fraud, it's like, all right, then who else should have gotten that spot? Because did you think Iowa State should have with their 7-11 conference record? Did you think Iowa State was worthy of a 2 seed or a 3 seed or something? Like, get out of here with that stuff. It's ridiculous. There's so many bad takes this March. I can't stand it when people use these results to try and justify the wrong decisions that were made about the bracket.
I'm with you, Connor, and especially on the Kentucky thing. I remember talking last week about the 6 SEC teams that were in, and who do you have faith to get to the Final Four, to the second weekend? And I said the only 2 teams that I have 100% faith in is Arkansas and Kentucky. And of course, we know what happened to Kentucky. Arkansas obviously still in. But when it comes to the early exits with guys that are getting paid football money like Calipari and Bruce Pearl, and the results aren't there, is instead of their contracts driving up the price of the SEC coaching market, do you think that the results could possibly delay that price for everybody else to, rising tide lifts all boats and all the other boats and salaries rise too? Or how do you feel the results are going to affect that?
No, I don't think they will. I think they're going to continue to climb. I mean, what was the USA Today stat? It was like 12 public universities in the SEC have basketball coaches making at least $3 million. Meanwhile, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12 have 14 combined. I mean, the money in the SEC is not going anywhere anytime soon. They're going to continue to pay these coaches. And, we didn't really see these splashy hires in the SEC with filling some of these vacancies. Like, I thought Florida was going to make a real play for, like, a Scott Drew. I thought there were a lot of things on the table. They end up going with a guy who has a more modern approach to offense, which is going to be just a breath of fresh air after whatever offense Mike White was playing down there. But I think that, we're still going to see these prices rise. And it's going to be a situation like with Arkansas, like with Alabama, where, maybe these guys get signed to, deals that are a little bit lesser, but their extensions will be significant. Like if you win and follow the model that we saw at Arkansas and Alabama, and, you get a coach after year 2 where you're like, all right, this is the guy. They have things figured out. then you're going to see that big money come into play. But no, I don't necessarily think these tournament results are going to all of a sudden to tell SEC programs that they need to spend less on head coaches.
Well, already one high-profile coach has said, no thanks to the SEC. I saw where Sean Miller had a standing offer from both South Carolina and Xavier, and he took the path that he'd taken previously with the Xavier Musketeers. I mean, I don't know what that says about South Carolina. You know, a successful coach going back to a place where he's already had success. I don't know. What do you make of that?
It's interesting because Sean Miller could have been like Bruce Pearl. I think he could have been to South Carolina what Bruce Pearl was to Auburn. And I think there were a lot of people that were kind of expecting that. And if that was the hire, I think we'd be praising it right now because, obviously Sean Miller has a checkered past with, the violations, the things that he was accused of, the wiretapping, all those different things. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's kind of the type of guy that if you're South Carolina, you take a chance on. I mean, it's a totally different story. Like this is his past isn't necessarily the past of like an Art Briles or something like that. We're not talking about taking a chance in that sort of way and trying to justify it in that way. But I think that, South Carolina seeing that might not necessarily be indicative of the job that's available. But I just think that Sean Miller decided he wanted to go back to a place where he had success. And he's like, hey, this is a basketball-focused school. I know I have a clear path to the NCAA tournament. Maybe he just thought that might be a little bit of a better fit for him at this point, given what he's already been. But, significant to see that was so out there that South Carolina was pretty much saying, we want Sean Miller, and, it didn't end up happening.
Connor, appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the rest of the games, and we'll get at it again next week.
It's that time of year as college basketball takes center stage with the tournament finally upon us. If you're looking to wager this year, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all your updated odds and info, along with great contests, including the bracket contest, where you can have a chance to take home the top prize. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's BLEAV. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline, where the game starts.